It's never too soon to start improving your fantasy team, and that includes getting active in the trade market. Here are 5 players that I think are being undervalued, and their slow start to the season just makes them even better trade values. Now, the new darling of MLB and the fantasy world is top prospect Wyatt Langford, outfielder for the Rangers. And he's carrying on in the regular season just like he finished the spring on fire. And no, there is absolutely no buy low window on him. In fact, it's quite the opposite. But with all the hype Langford is getting, what happened to fellow prospect and Ranger outfielder Evan Carter? Well, as it stands right now, he's got a cool batting average of 0. Not cool so much as ice cold. Small sample, sure. Am I worried? No. In fact, this is the time where I'm going to start to take advantage of some of the panic that might be settling into people who pulled the trigger on him pretty early in drafts, because he was for the most part going within the top 100. Now we know Carter is a super talented prospect. That's never been a question, in a great situation. But slow start, he didn't play that way in the spring. He was also on fire throughout spring training. I'm not too worried about the slow start because it seems like the only problem is he's just being too patient. Despite not getting a hit just yet, he's walked 5 times. He's only struck out once. This is not a guy who's making bad decisions at the plate, not chasing, not pressing. He's just being too patient, and sometimes that actually can hurt a hitter. Now, Carter is showing off in one way, and that's with his speed. So far, again, very early in small sample size, but 97th percentile in sprint speed, and he has stolen a base. Although Langford does have a little bit more raw power than Carter, and I think he might actually want to go for more home runs this year as a rookie than Carter, I think Carter's definitely got the speed advantage, and he's going to steal upwards of 20 bases. That bat will get going. If you got somebody who's just very impatient, somebody who drafted Carter but maybe doesn't love him, or is just willing to sell at the right price, I think this is the time to go out and make an offer because it won't be too long before Carter starts getting hits. Another of my preseason draft favorites was pitcher Bryce Miller for the Seattle Mariners. I love that whole Mariners staff, basically. Miller's first start against the Red Sox was just okay, nothing great. He gave up 4 runs on 6 hits in 5 innings. He did give up a couple of home runs. But what I want you to keep in mind is that Miller, again, throughout this offseason, working on a new pitch, he's incorporating a splitter. And so there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve here. I know that's not what you want to hear, but again, early in the season, he's using this splitter. He used it 20% of the time in this first start, and it was actually really good. He generated a 60% whiff rate on it and 4 strikeouts. In fact, I really don't think that was the issue. Look, a guy like Emmanuel Valdez, a second baseman who doesn't play every day necessarily for the Red Sox except for injury, he wound up throwing a fastball right down the pipe to him, and he took him deep. Tyler O'Neill also took him deep. Altogether, it wasn't a bad outing. Miller was mostly good. Now, Bryce Miller was not an early draft pick by any means. In fact, he was seen more of just like a late-round flyer, a sleeper. There are probably some leagues he wasn't even drafted. You can definitely buy on the cheap here. I'm not worried too much about one start for really any starter just yet, but especially someone I believe has a talent and is ready to take that leap forward. His first start wasn't that bad, but I guarantee that you can get him for the price of another late-round pick. Now, Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs is a little bit more well-known, but still not somebody who stands out as a superstar or potential star. He's just a solid everyday player. And I don't think necessarily that in 2024 he's going to take this huge step forward and be a superstar, but I still think he's being undervalued. He got off to a sluggish start last year, also missed a little bit of time with some nagging injuries, wound up hitting 285, got you 20 home runs, doesn't really steal bases. So again, solid, but not an exciting fantasy prospect. But at the end of the day, it's not excitement that wins fantasy leagues. It's production, it's consistency, and Suzuki will give you that. Now, he will hit for average, off to a pretty slow start right now, hitting 222, but his expected batting average shows he should be hitting much better. That's 283. Again, small sample alert, but still, this is somebody who has hit for average, will hit for average. His hard hit rate is there. He's lined out, had a couple of bad breaks in terms of batted ball luck, but he can hit the ball hard. Last year, got to the 20 home run mark. I think he can get a little bit higher, maybe 25 by season's end. He's at the top, or at least hitting second, in a pretty good Cubs lineup, hitting just ahead of Cody Bellinger, should score plenty of runs. So yeah, the steals won't be there, which is why he's really not going to be more than like a third outfielder for most fantasy teams. But this is somebody who I still feel is getting undervalued. If you're looking for more of a true power bat, then I think it's time to really take Jake Burger more seriously. While Burger has actually gotten off to a pretty good start in terms of average, he's getting hits, but he hasn't gone deep yet, and that's really what you expect if you took him. And the Marlins, just as a team, off to as bad as a start as you can imagine. There usually isn't too much interest around a powerless power hitter on a winless team. But in this case, let's both look at the fact that it's still 1 week into the season, and Burger has plenty of thump in that bat. But I'm actually more encouraged by the batting average because we already know the power is going to be there, and I like that he has hit and done nothing but hit since he got to Miami. He posted a .303 batting average across 198 at-bats after getting dealt to the Marlins last year, and he's off to a scorching start, hitting .400 in the first 5 games. And despite not going deep yet, that includes 7 RBIs. Even better is where he's hitting, and that is 3rd in that lineup, just ahead of Jazz Chisholm. If you did take Burger or pick him up early in the season, you're expecting a guy to get you 30 home runs, but maybe a middling average, nothing else special. And now you're looking at a guy who maybe can give it all to you. I mean, not speed, of course. And then finally, I want to throw out there also, it was really interesting to see early on, he got a random start at first base with Josh Bell sliding to DH. I don't expect that to happen too often, but if somehow, as the season goes on, Burger adds first base eligibility, that just makes him even more valuable. And then let's go to San Francisco. Jordan Hicks, another one of those relievers converted to a starter. So far, so good for Garrett Crochet for the White Sox. Not so good for AJ Puck in Miami, but I'm still going to play the waiting game there and see how he does this next time around. Jordan Hicks, also good. Look, in his first start, 5 scoreless innings. That included 6 strikeouts, and he was hitting 100 on the radar gun. Look, when I talked about Hicks in the preseason, already told you the deal. If you know him, talent has never been the issue. He's always had that heat. He's always been able to get batters out. He just hasn't been able to stay on the mound long enough. And now as a starter with extended innings, is he really going to be able to hold up? Well, clearly we don't know yet. It's going to take a while. But I will say the results are good. Him going multiple innings didn't seem like an issue. Remember, this is San Francisco now. This is a very favorable park for him. And San Francisco overall, I think, is going to surprise some people in terms of how well they perform this season. This is also a good time for me to mention that when you make a waiver wire ad or a trade, you get these players right now, you do want to think long term. Obviously, you want them to be able to contribute to your team for the whole season if possible, but sometimes that's just not realistic. You don't have to look at a guy's season-long projection. Sometimes it's just good enough to have them help you in the short term. Now, we want Jordan Hicks to hold up. I'm not saying, I'm only assuming he's throwing 80 innings this season. If so, no, you wouldn't go out and trade for him, but he doesn't have to throw 200 either. We're talking buy low. It will not take much, if anything, to get Jordan Hicks right now. And so I would bet on the talent. I bet that he can help you enough that he's worth making an offer for. So what kind of players should you be dangling out there to get all these buy low candidates? Well, I'll tell you in the sell high video. That's right. There's some guys off to great starts that maybe are just going to be overvalued in fantasy. You might be able to extract a lot more from an opposing team than you think in exchange for those guys. So be on the lookout for that. In the meantime, keep it locked here. Subscribe if you haven't already, and check out our latest video for all the best fantasy advice.